couple new eliminations, and they're all mathematically eliminated. You know what? I've thought about this graphic. We probably need to revise these red X's. You can't really see who's underneath them.
eliminated.
That's the Colts and Seahawks who have been added to the eliminated tiers. Maybe next year we'll do a better job with that. All right, now to the actual tiers. One game short. Man, it'll be a long offseason for the Falcons and Dolphins if it turns out the way I think it's going to. Falcons are going to be thinking about the fact that they lost to the Saints when the Saints were in the midst of a free fall. They had the Chargers on the ropes and couldn't just get to 20 points. And for the Dolphins, when Tua came back, they lost to Arizona by 1 and lost to Buffalo in a game that gets kind of lost, but it was Tua played well, they played well. Buffalo, it's a field goal with a few seconds left or maybe at the gun to win that game. And I think that's going to be the difference for these teams because even if they both win this week, they don't control their own destiny. Scary, except on Sundays. You know what? This Cincinnati narrative is going to drive me crazy. It's going to drive me insane. I watched a segment very similar to the one we did earlier this week on a competing network. It was in an airport. TV channel wouldn't change. And they in back-to-back segments did how scary Cincinnati is and how other than Buffalo and Baltimore, they're the scariest team in the AFC. And the person making that argument in the very next segment picked them to lose to Pittsburgh this week, which is kind of what a lot of people believe. They're terrifying. They're dangerous. I can't trust them to beat the Steelers this weekend, though. And so again, nobody has been a bigger proponent for Joe Burrow over the last few years outside of Cincinnati than this guy. And I think he's been excellent. But the team is not good. He's good. People conflate how good your offense is with how scary you are as a team. And as Wilds would tell us,
defense wins championships.
Thank you, Kevin Wilds.
Still scary, don't they?
Okay, all right. Limping to the finish line. Denver and Houston, not great. So, awesome start. For Denver, awesome start to the year and really until these last couple weeks. Now, they desperately need a win against the Chiefs' backups to lock up their playoff berth. Houston, I don't really know if it was ever great for them this season, but right now they do look like they're coming off their absolute low point. And they're in a weird spot because you had your worst game of the year, and now you're probably not even going to play your guys. So it's going to have been quite some time before when you get to the playoffs, big gap between the last game you feel really good about and when you're playing in round one, probably against Pittsburgh, maybe against the Chargers. Technically maybe against the Ravens, but that's not going to happen. Gotta win a round. This is about Mike Tomlin and this is about Justin Herbert. So listen, I love Mike Tomlin. Feels like everybody loves Mike Tomlin. Except for the people in Pittsburgh who are very split on Mike Tomlin because it has been so long since they won a playoff game. There's not a lot of examples in NFL history for coaches going this long without winning a playoff game and keeping their job. Now, nobody thinks Tomlin's job should be in jeopardy again, except for some loud voices in Pittsburgh, most notably my buddy Andrew Filipponi, but set that aside. But you got to win a round this year, especially if you get Houston in round one. Yeah, you win this weekend against Cincinnati, then you're almost locked into that 5 seed. Technically, you can get the division. You got to beat Houston. And for the Chargers, it's tough. It's going to be tough. You're going to be on the road. But we need to see some result now that Herbert has an excellent coach and an excellent defense. Yeah. I don't think it's too much to ask. Next,
it is.
Bright future, murky present. And by that I mean I just think both these teams, because of their draw, are staring at a likely very short playoff tenure, potentially not making it out of the first weekend. I'd be shocked if Washington, whoever is the 7 seed, I should say, I'd be shocked if they make it out of round one. I don't think Philly's losing in round one. And whoever's the 6 seed is probably going to Tampa or to the Rams. I really like where both these teams are positioned moving forward. And I think for Washington, this was objectively a great season. So I think the future's bright. I don't think this year's playoff run is going to be long for either one of these teams. More than a spoiler, I think either of these teams could be in the NFC Championship game. I think the Bucs last year made it to the divisional round. The Rams last year lost by a point to Detroit. I still think had they won that game, they could have ended up playing the Chiefs in the Super Bowl. And while the Rams offense hasn't been humming as of late, after being 1-4, they've won 8 out of 10. And the Bucs offense is absolutely on fire and has to stay on fire because they need to win this weekend. They need to get Mike Evans his 1,000 yards. Steve Nash Suns, some conference finals, some what-ifs due to injuries, and just some really bad defenses. That was the Steve Nash Suns. Right now, it kind of feels like this year's Lions because they're all kind of wrapped into one. Made the conference finals a year ago, felt like this was a better team. Injuries, started to really catch up to you to where now it's a race to 40 every time they play, and I don't think that's sustainable. And I also sadly think the Lions season could be over in 9 days. As great as it's been, they lose Sunday night. They're going to be on the road in round 1 against one of those teams on the row right beneath them. Not an easy matchup. It's not really their fault, but I think that's where we're headed. Brew, I don't think you're going to like this, but it's fair. AFC Championship game or bust. Here's the deal. Here's why I say, I know you feel like they're Super Bowl or bust. I get it. I don't think there's any shame in losing to the soon-to-be 3-time defending Super Bowl champs. But you cannot have your fan base go absolute scorched earth napalm on the Bills and Josh Allen these last 2 weeks in this MVP online turf war between Ravens fans and Bills fans, and then lose that game. And then, where you have lost, this is a spot where you have more Pro Bowlers than any team in the league. Derrick Henry's been unbelievable. Lamar's having one of the greatest, I'm told, seasons any quarterback's ever had. DVOA has this Ravens team as the 5th greatest team in NFL history. For the record, they had last year's Ravens team as the 4th greatest team in NFL history. I'm not telling Aaron Schatz his algorithm needs to be tweaked, but maybe you're overvaluing the Ravens a bit. Regardless, you can't lose in round 1 or round 2 if you're them. Next, quietly awesome, Minnesota Vikings. A few years ago, the Vikings had a gaudy record. We didn't really talk about them because we didn't believe in them. This year, the Vikings have an awesome record. I do believe in them. We don't really talk about them. Probably are bad on that. I think the Vikings are going to win this weekend, be the 1 seed, and all of a sudden, we're going to be hearing skull chants in the NFC Championship game as they try to reach the Super Bowl. Hot team, hot seat. Sorry, Sirianni. This is the life of Philadelphia head coach.
Hot seat.
So here's why I say that. Brew, you think the Packers could beat them in round 1?
Yes, absolutely.
Man, I think he made the right decision on the Saquon thing, and I don't even know if it's his decision. But if they were to lose in round 1 in back-to-back years, I don't know what happens. I also think they're awesome and should be in the NFC Championship game, maybe at home, probably on the road. But they're in a very weird spot once again for different reasons this postseason. Perfect season. Here's question mark. Here's what I mean. So they did deny the Chiefs their perfect season. But if we were to script for Josh Allen to have a chance to become the media's QB1, this would be the process. Deny Patrick Mahomes a perfect season, that's a little bonus. Then win league MVP. And then what if the playoff route is this? Beat Joe Burrow in round 1, they could be playing them. Beat Lamar in round 2, they should be playing them. Beat Patrick in round 3 in his building,
he would get
and then go win the Super Bowl, he would get it.
Yeah.
And so and deliver the Bills their first championship ever, that would be a perfect season for Buffalo. It's all in front of them. Rested and disrespected. I mean, I don't even. I guess they're 15-1 by dumb luck. They don't have that many good players. Mahomes isn't carrying them. They only have one good player on defense. I can't figure it out. By the way, Trent McDuffie not making the Pro Bowl might be more outrageous than Patrick not making it, but that's fine. Just add it to the bulletin.
Oh, such nonsense. Let's get out of here, man. I've already went over the whole thing with the Kansas City Chiefs, and what makes them great and special is not their peak players. It's their collection of their ability to raise the floor, not necessarily their ceiling. Nick previously has literally defended talking about teams like the Packers not having all of these really, really special players, but not having any bad players, and that's what makes the Packers, a significantly better team, and that's where they are. And that's kind of more who the Kansas City Chiefs are than anything. So, just stop with that. But there's so many problems with this. As per usual, as we know. I was trying to do this real fast. But I'm not going through all of the teams. I'm just kind of going through the teams that I think matter the most right now. But I'm going to have the Texans at the bottom. In terms of the teams that matter, I'm leaving off the Falcons and the Dolphins right now, quite frankly. I have the Texans at the bottom. Then I actually have the Broncos. I have the Broncos move right up. I think the Broncos, out of the teams that can do the most damage in the playoffs, out of all the teams, that I think that can actually, I think really realistically right now, every team can kind of do some damage in the playoffs. But I think the Broncos need more perfect circumstances than anything else. I'm not so sure the Texans can do damage in the playoffs. I mean, they really are on a downward trajectory. I do not see the Broncos as limping to the finish line. I think what they've been able to do this season has been awesome, especially with the rookie quarterback. But I do think they're just going to need more things to bounce in their favor. As we saw against the Bengals, right? Like just having the opportunity to kick a field goal with time expiring, or having the ball second in overtime and being able to again just kick a field goal, win the game, and say goodbye. Like they need things to happen, I think, a little bit more out of their control, that would help them do work. And then I have my biggest category, actually, the Packers, the Commanders, the Rams, the Bucks, the Chargers, and the Steelers. These are all teams that I think can all genuinely do some damage, because of all of their high points I think their high points are truly brutal to stop. When the Packers are firing at all cylinders, I'm just like, how do you stop that? When the Commanders, we've seen Jaden Daniels absolutely balling. I mean, he's the type of quarterback where when he has the ball and there's 2 minutes left in the fourth quarter, if you're the opposing team, you're the opposing fan base, you do not feel good about that situation. If it was overtime and Jaden Daniels wins the coin toss and you're like, I don't feel good about this. Like, that is what Jaden Daniels and the Commanders brings. The Rams, they have not been playing their best and perfect ball, but I am still always going to have a healthy dose of fear when you're looking at Sean McVay, Matthew Stafford, Puka Nacua. I know Cooper Kupp is not who he was, but still, I'd love to see what he looks like in the playoffs if he rises to the occasion. The Bucks, I put the Bucks in there too, especially now that they're getting healthier. I think the Bucks are just, it's hard because since they've dealt with their injuries, but I think if we kind of try to put the injuries aside, I think the Bucks have just been a wildly inconsistent team. They either look like they're going to roll you and dominate and look awesome, or you're kind of like, what the heck was that? Right? I mean, and the perfect example of the what the heck was that was the game against the Panthers, was the game against the Cowboys. But then you see them against the Chargers and you're like, oh, well, there you go. So I think, I would still put them up there. The Chargers, this idea that the Chargers needs to, got to get a win, I think is absolute insanity. That is just absolute insanity when you look at who the Chargers are right now. Okay? This team was a mess. This team was awful last year. All right. This team has completely been turned around. They are still many pieces away. Yeah, their defense is a lot better, but they are still many pieces away from actually having a legitimate, viable offense and a complete team. It was never about this year. So this idea that they need to now go on the road and beat a top team, and again, depending on where the seeding lies, it could be a great team. Like, that's just insanity. That really, really, really is just absurd. So to put that on the Chargers is absurd. I do think that there is a path forward where they can get some wins and can shock some people and surprise some people, but it's It's a narrow path, but it is there. And then the Steelers. The Steelers are probably also my biggest question mark team at this moment in terms of what I've seen them do and what can they do. Because I do not like how those last few games have unfolded, but maybe it's just optimism. I don't know. I think they should also be getting a little bit healthier, but I think out of some of these teams, the Steelers, so a couple of their games could have gone in completely different directions if like this didn't happen and that didn't happen. And I get you can say that for many games, but it just seems like it was truly self-inflicted, and you're just kind of like, if only you didn't make that mistake or that mistake, this game maybe completely changes, or at the very least we view these losses completely different. And so that's kind of where I'm at with the Steelers. It's like, can they put it all together? We're going to find out. The Lions. And now I have the Lions, underneath my highest target. The Lions I have in the second tier, and all the other teams have it. So I guess I'll just say the other teams. It's Kansas City, Eagles, Bills, Ravens, and Vikings. I have them at the top. Those are all the teams where they're there and you're just like, oh my God, let's go. These are beasts. I think those teams deserve, no matter who they're playing, essentially those teams at the top, I think they're deserving to be favored over any of the teams below them. I'm not getting into like who will beat each other at that point. I'm just thinking, because I think if the Bills play the Ravens, and the Eagles play the Bills, and the Vikings play the Chiefs, and the Chiefs play the Ravens, I just think it's all genuinely a coin flip. I really, really, from the bottom of my heart, do. So that's why I put them all there. And the reason why I have the Lions one notch below them is not because I doubt the Lions or think the other teams are so much better, because it's, are they getting all their health back? Because I know they're supposed to keep getting these pieces back kind of over the next couple of weeks. Is Montgomery playing? Like, where is this all going? And I think it's not so much that the Lions can't beat those teams above them, or that those other teams are clearly better than them. It's just those other teams have the health advantage, and with the health advantage, I just feel that they do deserve to be on top of them. If the Lions were full strength, or as full strength as you could get, relatively speaking, I would absolutely put them up there. For much of the season, I had them above everyone else, but I do think the injuries, like, you can't deal with injuries and not suffer some sort of consequence in terms of like where you're at. And then I have the Bengals off to the side. The Bengals are actually not even on the tiers, because like I disagree with Nick. Like, Nick keeps kind of going back and forth, where for the longest time he kept saying that the Bengals are actually surprisingly a top team, and everyone made fun of him, even though that their record showed otherwise. And he talked about Joe Burrow. He has Joe Burrow in, on the second tier, I think, for, the mountain or whatever. I think it's like Mahomes, and then I think Joe Burrow is the next one. And so, yeah, I mean, like, I don't know what to do with the Bengals, because like this idea that the Bengals aren't scary is kind of insanity. It's kind of absurd. You should absolutely, again, I try to look at it through the opposing fan base. Like, if you're an opposing fan base and you have to go up against Joe Burrow, Jamar Chase, and T. Higgins, you should be sweating. I don't care who you are, whether you're the Chiefs, the Lions, the Bears, the Eagles, whoever. I didn't mean to say the Bears. I think I meant to say the Bills. But like, you absolutely should be like, man, I don't know. This is Joe Burrow. This is the Joe Burrow. Like, their defense is not good, but our offense better put up points, and we better not mess up and have a really bad random fumble, or, we better not have a tipped interception. Like, you're going to have to be on your game. And I think that that's kind of some of the energy that the Bengals bring. I think it's a real thing. That's why I'm not saying that the Bengals are a top team necessarily, but they might be the greatest bad team we've ever seen, the worst team with the greatest potential we've ever seen. I'm trying to figure out how to best phrase it, but I think it's a real thing with the Bengals. Whether or not they'll be able to pull it off, I don't know, but it is difficult to evaluate a team when it's obviously you have special teams, defense, offense, you have quarterback, wide receivers. I mean, like, you can be so strong in certain aspects that really are just absolutely insane, but be so weak in other parts. And that's exactly why the Kansas City Chiefs don't have all the Pro Bowlers, and Patrick Mahomes didn't make a Pro Bowl, because they don't have those weaknesses. Their ultimate strength, the Kansas City Chiefs' ultimate strength, is their lack of weakness for the most part. Whereas some of these other teams, their strengths are their really potent strengths, or is their insane offense, their run game, their O-line, whatever it may be. It is that bullet that packs such a more powerful punch. And so the Bengals have that insanely powerful punch with Joe Burrow, T. Higgins, and Jamar Chase more than anything, but then there's the other lacking, which then pulls them down. That's why when Nick kind of complains saying that the Chiefs are disrespected in this or that just falls on deaf ears, because I think that's fundamentally nonsense.